The Lusitanians were one of Rome's greatest challenges on the Iberian Peninsula. Known for their courage and combat skills, this people bravely resisted Roman domination, using guerrilla tactics and fiercely defending their independence. In this video, we will explore the origin and history of the Lusitanians and their resistance against the mighty Roman army. The Lusitanians occupied a region located between the Douro and Tejo rivers, an area full of mountains, valleys, and difficult-to-access terrain. This challenging geography helped shape their way of life and independent spirit, as the land naturally provided protection against external invaders. They lived in small fortified settlements known as castros, located in strategic positions. The origin of the Lusitanians is a topic that blends historical and archaeological elements. While some, like the geographer Strabo, classify them as Celtiberians, archaeological evidence suggests that they were actually a people of pre-Celtic Indo-European origin. Over time, the Lusitanians incorporated Celtic cultural elements due to geographical proximity, but maintained traits that distinguished them from other neighboring tribes. Historians like Pliny the Elder reinforce this distinction in their writings, pointing out significant differences between the Lusitanians and other Iberian and Celtic peoples. The Lusitanians were widely recognized for their bravery and military skills, described by ancient historians as one of the most courageous peoples of the Iberian Peninsula. The Greco-Roman historian Diodorus Siculus even stated that they had incredible strength and resilience. The first conflicts between the Lusitanians and the Romans originated in the context of Rome's expansion on the Iberian Peninsula, following the defeat of Carthage in the Second Punic War. In 206 BC, Rome took control of the ancient Carthaginian territories in the southern part of the peninsula, including important regions in Spain. This domination caused tensions with the local populations, who soon rebelled against the Roman presence. The Roman conquest generated great dissatisfaction among the native peoples of the Iberian Peninsula. The Iberian and Celtiberian populations, known for their independence and warrior culture, began to resist. These initial revolts, concentrated in the south and central Spain, quickly spread to involve other free peoples, such as the Lusitanians who inhabited the western part of the peninsula. The Lusitanians began fighting the Romans in 194 before Christ, adopting guerrilla tactics to face the powerful Roman military machine. They mainly attacked Hispania Ulterior, one of the two Roman provinces in the southern part of the peninsula. These raids aimed to defend their territories and resist foreign domination. Battles between the Lusitanians and Romans continued for decades, and the mountainous nature of the Lusitanian territory gave them a strategic advantage, allowing ambushes and quick attacks against Roman armies. Even so, the Romans gradually increased their military presence, consolidating control over broader regions of the peninsula. Around 179 BC, the conflicts between the Lusitanians and the Romans finally ceased, at least temporarily. This was largely due to the actions of Tiberius Sempronius Gracchus, the Roman governor of Hispania Ulterior. Gracchus gained the respect of the Lusitanians by implementing a more diplomatic and conciliatory approach, rather than relying solely on military actions. His ability to negotiate and establish agreements helped create a truce between the two sides. But soon, the Lusitanians faced difficult times again under the administration of new Roman governors. These leaders did not share Gracchus's diplomacy, and driven by greed, they began oppressing the local tribes, completely ignoring the previous agreements. In 154 before Christ, frustrated with the conditions imposed by the governors, and after their complaints were ignored by the Roman Senate, the Lusitanians resumed hostilities against Rome. They launched attacks on Hispania Ulterior, bravely resisting the Roman occupation. A year later, in 153 before Christ, groups of Lusitanians showed their audacity by crossing the Pillars of Hercules, now known as the Strait of Gibraltar, and attacked territories in Africa, taking the conflict beyond the borders of the Iberian Peninsula. The Lusitanians continued to resist with strength and determination. In 152 before Christ, they inflicted a significant defeat on the governor of Hispania Ulterior, Servius Sulpicius Galba. Although the Lusitanians showed courage and military skill, years of war took a heavy toll. Their lands were devastated, many villages were burned, and thousands of people were killed and enslaved. Facing extreme difficulties, the Lusitanians decided to negotiate peace. They sent emissaries to Sulpicius Galba, who seemed willing to listen to their complaints. According to the historian Appian, Galba acknowledged the hardships faced by the Lusitanians and appeared to sympathize with their situation. He stated that he understood that the poverty of the land and lack of resources had led them to war and promised a peaceful solution. Galba said he would give them good land and settle them in fertile regions, dividing them into 3 groups for better organization. His words seemed to offer hope to a people already exhausted by war. He asked the Lusitanians to surrender their weapons as proof of their peaceful intentions. However, this promise was a cruel trap. After disarming the Lusitanians, Galba ordered trenches to be dug around them. When the families were surrounded, Roman soldiers advanced, killing all the men of fighting age and enslaving women and children. This shocking massacre left few survivors and deeply marked the Lusitanians. Galba kept most of the spoils for himself and returned to Rome unpunished, protected by his immense wealth despite the outrage of the Roman Senate. Among the few survivors of Galba's massacre was a young man named Viriathus, whose life would change forever. He swore revenge on Rome and dedicated himself to his people's cause. Viriathus quickly stood out as a leader and warrior, becoming a central figure in the Lusitanian resistance. In 147 before Christ, Viriathus joined a Lusitanian army that invaded the region of Turdetania, an area controlled by the Romans. The Roman legacy of Gaius Vitellius responded quickly, cornering the Lusitanians against a river and leaving them with no escape. Desperate, the Lusitanians sent emissaries to Vitellius, offering to surrender their weapons in exchange for fertile land, in an attempt to avoid further bloodshed. Although some Lusitanian leaders were willing to accept surrender, Viriathus firmly opposed it, recalling Galba's betrayal. He inspired his companions to resist, appealing to the pride and courage of their tribe. Convinced by his words, the Lusitanians appointed Viriathus as the new commander of the entire army, and Viriathus quickly demonstrated his military genius. Leading the Lusitanian cavalry, he used guerrilla tactics to disorient the Romans. With quick and calculated attacks, he confused Vitellius and his troops, creating a gap that allowed the Lusitanian infantry to escape the siege. This episode not only saved the Lusitanians from certain defeat, but also marked the beginning of a brilliant resistance campaign led by Viriathus against Rome. After escaping the Roman siege led by Gaius Vitellius, Viriathus organized a brilliant ambush in the valley of the Barbisula River. Using his cavalry to lure the Romans into a narrow pass, Viriathus launched a coordinated attack with his infantry, causing heavy losses to the Roman army, including the death of Vitellius. This victory increased his fame and attracted new followers. Viriathus employed innovative guerrilla tactics, avoiding direct combat with the Romans. He preferred ambushes and quick strikes, taking advantage of his knowledge of the terrain. And Viriathus's resistance forced Rome to send its best generals to face him. Between 146 and 142 before Christ, he faced military campaigns led by Fabius Maximus Aemilianus, Quintus Pompeius, and Fabius Maximus Servilianus. Despite some defeats, Viriathus managed to corner Servilianus and negotiate a treaty that recognized the Lusitanians as allies of the Roman people. This agreement was a remarkable achievement for the Lusitanians and solidified Viriathus as an unbeatable leader. However, the treaty was seen as a humiliation for Rome, and peace did not last. Under the command of Quintus Servilius Caepio, the Romans resumed the war in 140 before Christ. Unable to defeat Viriathus in direct combat, Caepio bribed 3 of Viriathus's close allies, named Audax, Didelchus, and Manurus to assassinate him. Viriathus was killed while sleeping, marking the end of his leadership and the organized resistance of the Lusitanians. The traitors fled to the Romans in search of the promised payment, but they were rejected with the claim that Rome did not reward traitors. After the assassination of Viriathus, Tautalis assumed leadership of the Lusitanians, but without the same strategic talent as his predecessor. He led a failed siege of the city of Saguntum, but was defeated by Caepio on the banks of the Betis River. Forced to surrender, Tautalis negotiated a peace treaty, and the Lusitanians were given land to settle, ceasing their rebellious activities. Years passed, and the Lusitanians were one of the last Iberian tribes to be completely subjugated. In 60 before Christ, Julius Caesar led a decisive campaign that weakened Lusitanian power. This action marked a final blow to the organized resistance of the Lusitanian people. After the submission of the Lusitanians, Roman control over the region was consolidated with the conquest of Numantia, a city in Celtiberia that supported the northwest tribes, including the Lusitanians. This victory facilitated the total pacification of the territory, allowing the Romans to advance with their administration in the region. The process of conquest was completed during the reign of Emperor Augustus, who unified the Iberian Peninsula under Roman rule. In 29 before Christ, Augustus declared the Pax Romana, marking the end of the Roman civil wars and establishing a new period of peace and stability. In this context, Lusitania was incorporated into Spain, which was divided into 3 provinces: Lusitania, Hispania Baetica, and Hispania Tarraconensis. Under Roman rule, the Lusitanians lost their independence, but their culture and population integrated into the Roman world. Over time, the region saw the formation of a Hispano-Roman identity, a result of centuries of cultural, social, and political influence. This period would last until the 5th century, when barbarian invasions ended Roman control in the Iberian Peninsula, marking the end of the Roman era over the ancient Lusitanian territories. And that was the story of the Lusitanians, a warrior people who resisted Roman domination to the fullest. If you liked the video, do not forget to leave a like. It really helps me with my work.